I also see someone has called in, so Hank and I will try our best to, whenever there's images up on the screen, to describe what we're seeing. And even better yet, we have Bernie from RA3 on here, and he has been taking on very in sort of typical Red Cross flexibility fashion, the feeding lead for our most recent response down in Gibson City. So Bernie, if you're feeling comfortable about it tonight, no pressure to give a little bit of an update on how things are going for you down there early on. So we'll get started. I'll introduce myself, and then I'll let Hank introduce himself. So my name's Ari Denson. I'm the Mass Care and Logistics Manager for the Illinois region. I work with Hank Welch, Jamie Winterbottom on all our feeding programs, and I work with Steve Wise, Cindy Altman on sheltering, Sue Keel and Ron Leffler on logistics, and Eric Lorenz on DST. Today we're gonna just go over some quick updates. There's been some changes in feeding, some activity that's going on, and I really appreciate you guys being here tonight. Hank?
Good evening, everybody. I'm a 5-year volunteer based out of Evanston, and if you don't know where that is, it's just north of Chicago, and have been involved in feeding for now about 2.5 years. I got a tap on the shoulder and said, "Hey, would you like to do this?" This was before COVID, before we had all of the different tornadoes and disasters, and the feeding for that last year was one event, so I thought, oh, this is going to be easy. Needless to say. But thanks for everybody joining tonight.
All right, let's get started. So first of all, I'd like to sort of give a quick update on our most recent responses. We've had a bit go on most recently, and to sort of get started on it, Bernie, would you like to, if you're all right with it, sort of give a quick update on sort of what feeding has been going on and sort of this most recent response down in Gibson City?
Sure. So I guess it all started late Thursday night. A little bit of a frantic call on how to get breakfast to the shelter and the clients on Friday morning. We were able to take some of our experience and a connection with the IGA Food Liner down in Paxton, Illinois, which I guess is about 20-30 minutes away from Gibson City, to have them assemble some breakfast bags for us with, some cereal boxes and individual cereals and milks and some fruit and whatnot for us. So they assembled all the bags for us, and we had somebody come and pick us up, and we were able to get them breakfast on the morning after the flood. So that was a really good teamwork there for getting the contact and finding the organization that was willing to help us out and develop, put the bags together and stuff. So and it's kind of gone on from there. Feeding, we did have the Salvation Army along with the American Legion step up, and as of now, they are providing lunches and dinners for the shelter. They have been doing that since Sunday night. So it's been reduced my role to just worrying about breakfasts and stuff like that. So it's going on pretty good. Working with the shelter supervisors, they've been very helpful, giving me counts and finding out what we really need. So all in all, fingers crossed, it seems like it's really going smoothly. So that's about it.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Bernie. And Bernie sort of took on that role very quickly at sort of 9-10 o'clock at night, and that's sort of how he started figuring out what was needed for breakfast. To give everyone a bit more background, there's a flash flood in Gibson City, which is Ford County. Throughout the entire area from those storms of about on the 12th and 13th, we had approximately, we're looking at about 100 homes either destroyed, major, or unlivable at this time. Along with we had a decent sized population. Seniors, there's a senior sort of living apartment complex that was really badly damaged. And so that's sort of the framework of what we're looking at. And then one other thing, and I'm not sure if I missed it, Bernie, but unlike some of the other responses that we had, and Hank Welch has done really well with this, Jamie Winterbaum, our other feeding leads. It's most recently, we've been working very closely with Salvation Army and American Legion to provide some meals on the ground. So some of the other things that we've been doing is just really coordinating really well with some of the other partners, not duplicating services, and getting the same meals that we can to clients in the most efficient way possible, and respecting the donor dollar. And Bernie's really exemplified that and sort of making sure that we work with those partners. Before I move on, does anyone have any questions about the most recent responses or anything else you'd like to add, Bernie? Hank?
Yeah, there's one other response that I'd like to share. It was more of a DES, it turned out, disaster, a delivery of emergency supplies. A small town north of Peoria, happen to know it, Castleton. The emergency management official for Stark and Henry County called us at about 6 o'clock at night and indicated that the town well had broken down and the population was going to be without water for up to 10 days. And they were asking for us to obtain water. Apparently their script book on emergencies, Red Cross is #1. So they called us first, and because of several other prior incidences, I knew the Peoria chapter capabilities pretty well in terms of supplies, and Peoria chapter, which happens to be in a different response area, was 30 minutes or 35 minutes away from Castleton. Rockford, that covers Stark County, was an hour and 50 minutes away. So we figured that Peoria would be by far the closest chapter. And Tony Bustos, who's on this call, called the EMA person to get more information and was the contact person for this event. After talking with several of the leadership people, we decided that yes, we should get as much water to them as possible, because at that point we didn't know how many, we didn't have a count of how many people, but I knew it was a very, very small town, and that they could see if we could get water by noon the next day. At that point, we didn't know if it was 50 people or 75 people or 100 people, whatever. Anyway, that landed on me and on my lap, and the other person that had really helped out was Dave Stoner. He's on this call. Dave, thank you so much for stepping up. He had an open slot that evening to run down in his truck to the chapter in Peoria, load up water, and take it up to Castleton. It probably took you, I think, Dave, about 3 hours total. And within 3 hours of the notification, we had over 1,000 bottles of water dropped off in Castleton. And Tony is a relatively new volunteer, I believe. Hope I'm hope I'm right there, Tony. Thank you so much for being the point person for that event. And absolutely. Thank you so much for everybody that helped out, especially Dave. Harold wrote up a nice little article about how great we responded in such a short period of time. We dropped everything to make this happen. And the EMA person for Stark and Henry County was amazed, especially when you told them it would be noon the next day, and we showed up at 8 o'clock. And as far as I know, we're good to go.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Thanks, Hank.
Oh, sorry. You are correct, Hank. I've only been a volunteer since the end of December.
Well, great. Thank you so much for Tony for picking up and spearheading all of that. That it is great when you're only you're talking through one person and you're not you don't have 5 people talking to the same person and getting different ideas.
Thanks. Does anyone else have anything else? Any questions about any of the responses that we've had, either one of them? Awesome. Thanks, Hank. Thanks everyone who's responded so far this past month. It's been busy. COVID compendium. I want to go over I sort of want to hit on the most important update, which was related to mask wearing, and I will actually pull this up so you guys can see. Can everyone see the COVID compendium right now?
Yes.
Okay. So this is probably one of the biggest things, and I know one of the challenges that we've had most recently is, back on June 7th, there's supposed to be that hard transition to everything being in DAD and mass care activities. There's some back and forth about under what circumstances we wear masks, what circumstances, clients would have to wear masks. And a lot of those things ended up having to get walked back as Delta variant came out, and we had, as an organization, to again adjust to what was happening on the ground. It's made it difficult, I think, for everyone to figure out what is the requirement, where are we supposed to be doing going forward. So for all intents and purposes, essentially, from now on, wearing a mask when doing all activities is mostly the way that we're going to go. Which makes it fairly easy at the moment to do that. So it's a mass care response. If we're going out there, you'll be wearing a mask, especially if it's anything with it indoors. The harder part, and this is where some people might have more difficulty, is they specify down here that all Red Cross clients need to wear masks. That is a hard, they need to, and we should really be pushing that. There's some flexibility there, though, in which we're not going to necessarily deny someone access to our services. If push comes to shove, we'll work on ways to accommodate them while keeping everyone else safe. Because it's essential that while I think we need to be wearing masks as an organization when we're responding, you have to wear a mask. It's the best way to keep us safe and to deal with this newest spread. There are people out there who, it could be for medical reasons, and there could be other reasons why they might not want to. We need to find ways to accommodate that. So it's going to be probably one of our greater challenges, but I know that everyone here has just that humanitarian spirit that will find that way of sort of getting to yes, of accommodating that person and keeping everyone safe. So this is really like the core of the updates, of the most important one. Additionally, coming up on this Thursday at 1, every month, National holds a mass care webinar, which they bring in people from across the nation to talk about from National about different updates within mass care activities. My recommendation is that if you're available, to attend it. The information for that can be found on the exchange. And in the second one, I hand this back over to Hank. I'll find the link to that and pop that in the chat for you guys to go to. But it's going to be a great chance to hear from senior leadership in response and disaster services to talk about some of these changes and how we're going to adapt and deal with them in light of the changes with COVID and the pandemic. But the biggest thing is really just, if you have a time, if you have questions, to revert back to this. This will probably get changed again in the future. But the biggest thing is that right now, if you're out doing mass care services, whatever it may be, you'll be required to wear a mask, and you should be wearing a mask. And whenever and wherever possible, we need to be encouraging our clients to be doing the same while you're receiving our services. Does anyone have any questions on this? Any concerns, anything like that? All right, I'm going to hand this over to Hank because Jackie is one of the people actually who's most recently been working on this response. Hank?
Got to put my mic back in place here. Okay. Jackie Special, she is in McHenry County. She was not able to attend this meeting. She had another obligation, but through the Morris battery fire that we had a month and a half ago, Jackie has been working with multiple agencies in her area, doing joint responses for funerals for a state trooper, a couple other canteening incidents. She's also a Rotary member, very high, highly involved Rotary member. And through that contact, she has developed a list of multiple people in McHenry County that's going to be participating in our capabilities for feeding, that survey that we have been talking about for the last couple of months, going out to different vendors, caterers, restaurants, just food stores like the IGA, and seeing what they can provide if we have a large scale disaster like Gibson City. Actually, Jackie was the shelter manager at Gibson City, I believe, on Saturday and Sunday, and she drove all the way from McHenry, so that was quite a haul. We are talking, or we are working with Salvation Army, the Morris fire. The Salvation Army had a very large presence, along with the director. That's the second gentleman with the beard there on our screen. He was also running a nonprofit organization that helps maintain a food pantry, make sure that the kids in that county gets breakfast and lunches at schools and things like that. The food pantry was the largest one I've seen outside of Chicago. It was huge. And we worked with him delivering meals, talking or coordinating menus. A lot of the food was donated. Starbucks had a real big donation. There was one restaurant that picked up and delivered hamburgers for multiple days. And just down the street from where there's a shelter, we had about a small handful of people in the shelter. The shelter people, they're just down Shelter Road basically was a barbecue place, and they brought in barbecue sandwiches that were absolutely supreme. And all they did was they talked to Greg and said, Greg, this is what I want to do. When can I deliver them? And he coordinated that with myself. I was down there for 3 days, and we delivered a canteen to basically all of the firemen. At one point, the first night, we delivered 300 sandwiches to the first responders that were trying to put the fire out. And I think this event lasted 5 days. We're not trying to compete with Salvation Army. If they wanna take the lead, we can be in the background helping. I think that's the same thing as what's going on in Gibson City. And if they want to come in after we're there, and I think that's what happened up in Rockton for the oil manufacturing company up there that had that big fire. Different agencies came in and offered their services, and we said, fine, let's have you do dinner for one night. And we did that several times. It makes things easier for us. The main thing is we got to make sure that they're following food safety guidelines. The food pantry area had a commercial kitchen license, so that was good, as did all of the other vendors that provided meals. That's the number one requirement that we have. And worked out very, very well. External relations is usually our go-between. Salvation Army will contact them, and then they'll talk to us, and then we get together and coordinate. So, anybody have any questions about that? So I do have a request. If you guys could reach out to your community, if there is a nonprofit or anybody that is in the food service area, write down their names, email them to me. We will talk to them to see what they would be able to provide if we had a disaster, and we could do the analysis form or evaluation form over the phone, and then we could make a trip and talk to them in person after that happens. So if anybody has any ideas, shoot an email to me, hank.welch3 at Red Cross. We'll follow up on that. That's about it, Ari.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And yeah, please forward that information to Hank. If you have questions or are curious about being involved or engaged, please, Hank loves those calls with questions, interests. This is something that we're sort of getting a slow roll on and getting started on, and the effects of it might not be immediate, but long-term efforts and time, a year from now, 5 years from now can I think deliver us a lot of benefits in return. So this is something that it's not going to be in the ground running 50 miles an hour, but getting started now with us will have a lot of long-term benefits.
And Ari, let me explain the other two people that are in that photograph. The gentleman with the shades is the mayor of Morris, Illinois. The gentleman with the beard was the gentleman from Salvation Army. Next to him is the fire chief, who was on national TV for about 5 days. And the other person with the mask happens to be myself. So.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Hank. And I see a comment. Thank you, Josie. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Moving on. So put here, hopefully, we're hopeful that again we'll be able to start doing trainings at some point later in the month. The main thing is if you have NERV qualification, you want to stay up to date on what those qualifications are. If you have questions about, you were a NERV driver, you're not sure if you have all the right trainings, questions about that, let me know. Essentially, once the new training comes out, everyone who was previously qualified will continue to be qualified until the end of the year, at which point you'll have to take the new training that's being offered. Now, when I say that, there's probably going to be some leeway. We'll have to see how much time, but I expect that they'll extend that deadline of completing new training beyond the end of the year, simply because it's taking them longer than originally anticipated to get at this training. I know that they were looking at it back in end of May, early June, and now we're nearing midway of August. So to account for that extra time that we would have had to get trained up on the new class for ERV, I expect, though I can't guarantee, that they'll give us a bit more time to get that completed. But as soon as that comes out, we'll try and hit the ground running as quickly as possible to offer as many trainings as possible throughout the region. Also want to give a shout out to anyone who's a part of it or is tangentially connected or works on ERVs. Just thank you so much for getting the semi-annual inspections completed. It's a lot of hard work. It's absolutely necessary in order for us to get our ERVs out on time. Just appreciate all your efforts. And then I'll end with just in terms of ERVs before I open up to any questions. Ron Leffler, who is our regular ERV lead, is still taking some time off. But if you are familiar with him or know him, which is probably a good number of you, he's doing a lot better. He's doing a lot better. He's slowly starting to get back into things virtually a little bit. And I'm hopeful that within time he'll be back as our ERV lead and doing the things that he was doing before. But I just want to let you know that he's doing a lot better. With that, does anyone have any questions? I'm not sure if I have necessarily a lot of answers, but any questions, comments, concerns? All right. Don't hesitate to throw stuff in the chat. Yeah, if you want to ask a question, don't want to necessarily talk in front of the group. Hank?
Okay. About a month ago, we received some very large totes that we are going to be distributing throughout the region. Each area that has an ERV will be receiving 2 totes, and they'll be stored mostly at the chapters. And there'll be 1 tote for canteening, so it will be miscellaneous auxiliary supplies that you may need when you're doing in-person canteening for either a large fire or search and rescue or something like that. And also 1 that will be containing additional supplies and equipment for feeding. If we have a big feeding event, we'll take both of those totes and respond to the disaster. Just depends, but primarily so we have everything that we need. And I'm not going to read this list, but basically it's all the extra stuff that you need when you're handing out food, either from an ERV or if we're serving in a hotel or a gymnasium like we did for the tornado in Naperville. We just wanted to make sure that we had all the equipment needed. And what we've done is the National has come out with a recommended list of supplies, and it's pretty thorough. And then I've looked at it, and based on my food safety and food preparation background, we've added a couple extra items, like multiple temperature gauges for testing food, some more sanitary trays and things like that. The other thing is, if you get a canteen request, remember that it still has to go through the RLOC that's on duty to okay it. So if you get a request to do a canteening, please check to make sure that that's gone through the proper channels. And these totes will be distributed to all of the different chapters in the next month or two. Jamie Winterbottom and myself are working on that, and we're working, just basically getting all the supplies together, and then we'll be going out to all the different areas. In fact, we might be doing that in conjunction with the training if that happens to fit at that point in time. Okay, back to you, Ari. If there's any questions.
And can you just quickly let people know what RLOC is?
Oh, the regional on-service staff person or leadership person that okays a major response. Usually it's pretty much carte blanche, but they might run it up the chain to Adam or Alyssa just to make sure that everybody was in agreement that this is something we should do. Regional leadership on call. Thank you, Sue.
Perfect. Thanks for that. All right. Still you, Hank. Okay.
I think pretty much everybody has most of the service associate trainings. If you've been a volunteer for, a while, I know that you have the overviews and the concepts and the fundamentals of deployments. That's if that's required or really recommended if you want to be deployed outside of the region. And it's just some tips on how to prepare mentally and physically for being deployed, and all of the processes and procedures for transportation, and some tips on what you need to pack, and maybe you don't pack this. The biggest thing is mass care, the overview, feeding activity introduction, what we do when we do feeding, and a lot of you that are on this call I've worked with over the last year and a half, and thank you so much for everything you've done to support our feeding team. Basic food safety, that is my number one thing that I look at, making sure that we serve our meals properly, safely, and we have records that we can go back to concerning timing. Remember, everything has a 2-hour limit when it is below 140 degrees or above 40 degrees. Making sure that our fundamentals are covered, and of course, we welcome every person that we serve with open arms, and that's the service associate. We are pushing, like Bernie, to get some more supervisors, and that gives you a little bit more depth in terms of what happens during a disaster. And I'm afraid Sue's going to yell at me that most of it's paperwork. A lot of it's paperwork, but it's also coordinating the disaster workforce, understanding the whole concepts of the operation, leadership, who your supervisor are, what are the items you should be doing every day, like a job induction, explaining what your job is if somebody is new. Also, herbs. The new herbs are fairly limited to just feeding. They could be used for client intake. However, when we have COVID, that is restricted because of the cost of cleaning the herbs after it's done. It's quite expensive. So we do everything outside of the herb. So a regular vehicle is just as good. The load limits for the new herbs are fairly limited, so we can't use them for a lot of disaster DES supplies. It's going to be primarily feeding. Also, kitchen site management and simulation. Those two classes haven't been taught in a year and a half because of COVID. Hopefully, at some point, we will be having those taught again. Those are in-person classes. We really would like to get another 2, 3, 4 people interested to raise their hand to become a supervisor. And Jamie Winterbottom and myself will be your mentors, and we'll have some one-on-one training, especially in the paperwork area. The other thing we'd love to have is somebody who would really specialize on the paperwork. There's food requisitions. There's 3 different forms that we use day in and day out. And we'd love to have people versed in all those forms so there's no questions when we have a major disaster like Gibson City. Bernie has to fill out multiple forms every day requesting food. Even if it's coming from Salvation Army, we have to request it so we know that it's coming and we can expect it.
Hank, we
Yes, sir.
got Cheryl raising her hand.
Oh, great. Cheryl, go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, Cheryl.
Nothing. I just raised my hand. That's all.
Okay.
I'd
All
be
right.
interested in doing it.
Okay. Cheryl, what's your last name?
Gamers.
I will call you.
Okay.
Great.
Jamie's kind of mentoring me now. So.
Good. Okay.
Okay. Thank
Great. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Hey. Hey, Hank.
Yes.
Maury here.
Hey, Maury. How are you?
Good. I've been gone for a year, so some people may not know me. But prior to that, I think I went to like every DR, didn't I? And
yeah.
I think in 2018 I was gone half the year. But I worked with a lot of feeding people, and just to dovetail on what you said, it's one of the most fascinating and rewarding jobs you can have on a DR. It will challenge you, and it's hard work, but it's the most rewarding and flexible thing that you can do on a DR. So I just want to say that to encourage people to look into becoming supervisors.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And just a little background, I have responded to multiple fires with Maury up in Response Area 3 in Chicago, haven't we?
We have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look forward to
Good.
doing it again.
Absolutely, Maury. Absolutely. Okay, Ari?
Awesome, thanks. So after this, here's our info if you want to reach Hank, myself, or Jamie. One other thing, while we have some time, I want to really quickly, as a lot of you have probably seen, there's a lot going on, unfortunately, in the world. The US not excluded. So I want to really quickly show you, if you're not familiar, the door. Give you an idea of sort of what's out there. And the door is how they post positions and request stuff. So An example, they'll list it by number. So 155 is the command, so the main disaster response operation for Gold Country. And these are the positions that they're looking for. You can see that they had 20 shelter SA positions on the door. They had multiple shelter SVs. And the reason why I'm posting this is even though, some of these positions might not necessarily apply to us, the need is there. And if this is any sort of indication of where things are going, right now it's shelter SAs on the door, but I can guarantee it. I feel confident that there will be feeding positions, SAs, SVs, manager positions up there. So I encourage you, I welcome you all to get all the trainings done as soon as possible. If you're interested and able to, if you're healthy and you feel comfortable to, I invite you to think about updating your availability. Going out, serving the communities and doing the mission that we're about, which is alleviating human suffering and possible bringing back some of that knowledge back to the region and growing ourselves and making ourselves stronger and better prepared to serve our communities here in Illinois. So I just want to sort of use this as an illustration, sort of give you an idea of what's being needed out there. And this changes throughout the day. I believe they have about 50 different sheltering positions alone on the door in the morning for responses on the West Coast. Just give an idea of how quickly things go up and down. But yeah, please, I encourage you, if you have questions about trainings, about engagement here, please don't hesitate to reach out to Hank, Jamie, or myself. And I just want to say, thank you guys so much for spending some time with us today. And I'll leave it to any questions or comments before we wrap up for the night.
Could I make one more plug for anybody that would like to do feeding assessments in their county to give me a call or an email? That would be great.
All right. Well, everyone can have 15 minutes of their night back. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, your dedication to the mission. It's a pleasure to work with you all, and hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening.